Welcome, everybody, to week number 5 of our semester together. I'm Jamie Schramm, your instructor, who's been with you this semester so far. I wanted to make a recording of all of our material for this week. As I mentioned in my announcement, unable to be with you this Thursday night. Apologize, had another commitment that I had to be at. But I wanted to take the time to share with you a few thoughts and a few reflections upon the content that was relevant for this week. So if this video helps you out, awesome. Hope you enjoy it. If not, feel free to ignore it. Use the resources available to you as necessary to be successful. So this week we're looking at Chapter 3, which really looks at the internal organization and really explores the relationship between resources, capabilities, core competencies, and then how when you gain a core competency, you can gain a competitive advantage. So some internal analysis as we look at some of our content. There are resources. All organizations have resources. Tangible resources are things that you can touch, feel, physically identify. Intangible resources can be things like organizational culture. That's why when Patrick Lencioni says the only sustainable competitive advantage anymore is our organizational culture, he's talking about the intangible resource, right? We can tell everybody the tips and tools we use for our culture. We can have our values up on a chart. But how we go about interacting every single day, that's kind of the secret sauce. That's the intangible piece of that can make organizational culture such an effective, sustainable competitive advantage and so hard to duplicate. But we have resources that are tangible and intangible. And then if we bundle those resources in a meaningful way and something that creates value, we can have a capability. And when that capability exceeds the ability of our competitors, it becomes a core competency, right? And that core competency then can become a competitive advantage and can give us strategic competitiveness over our competitors. Now, it's important that what's a core competency today could become a core rigidity tomorrow. And I mentioned this very early in the semester. Avon is a great example of this, right? What was Avon's core competency? Personalized selling, sales, mostly sales ladies or saleswomen going to visit housewives back in 1950s and 1960s America to sell Avon's personal care products. Things shifted, right? We all know that by the late 1960s and definitely through the 1970s, more and more women were entering the workforce and having a career outside of the home, right? And in homes, households are becoming dual income households, right? Avon did not switch their strategy until the early 2000s, almost 30 to 40 years too late. So that core competency of personalized selling actually became a core rigidity. So creating value, right? When we exploit our core competencies, that's how we can create value. When you think of value, think of that as the intersection. And I had a mentor, a sales manager one time share with me, value is nothing more than the intersection of wants and needs, right? Where your customer, where your target market, where their wants and needs intersect, that's where you create value. That's where the magic happens. So some challenges of analyzing an internal organization, it's not necessarily always easy to do. A lot of those decisions around resources, capabilities, and core competencies are non-routine. There's not a script, there's not a standard operating procedure for how to make these decisions. And that's one of the reasons why I said very early on, decision-making is something that I feel is undervalued as a leadership skill and underdeveloped. We don't spend enough time, certainly I don't think, in traditional formal education, like a class like this, or even getting a business degree. And I certainly don't think as individuals, we spend enough time with our own reading, searching out our own information, our own self-reflections, thinking about how we make decisions and how we make successful decisions and where maybe we need to change our decision-making process, right? But they're non-routine. They can have ethical implications. We talked about ethics a lot a couple weeks ago, right? And that Wells Fargo case definitely ties into ethics. John Stump's behavior, Kerry Tolstoy's behavior. And it also significantly influences your ability to earn above average returns, right? So if you can analyze yourself internally and take an honest look in the mirror, that's important. Now, I know that's difficult. That can be really challenging in a lot of organizations, right? Some challenges of analyzing the internal organization, right? And some additional challenges, we need to understand when a capability is not a competence. Just because maybe we have a skill set doesn't mean we can create something of value in the marketplace and doesn't mean we can do it in a competitive way. We need to learn quickly from failures and mistakes, right? John Maxwell, who I've mentioned throughout the semester, one of his favorite books is Sometimes You Win, Sometimes You Learn, right? Not sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. We need to learn how to fail successfully, right? Failure is not final unless we quit, right? Failure is just another step on the way to success. And that might sound like a cliche. Some of you maybe have run across that, especially those of you that are in leadership and organizational development, right? We teach that. How do I fail successfully, right? When you fall off that horse, stay down there for a second, understand why you fell before you get back up, right? So you don't fall again, right? This third bullet point on one of these slides here, the challenges of analyzing internal organization. It's having the maturity of judgment to deal effectively, right, with uncertainty, complexity, and intra-organizational conflicts in an unbiased manner. Think about that, leadership teams, right? Managers, leadership teams, people who have the position and should, right, be able to demonstrate some level of emotional intelligence. But that statement, have the maturity of judgment to deal effectively with uncertainty, complexity, and intra-organizational conflicts in an unbiased manner, right? Sometimes, and I've shared this with executive teams and CEOs when I've done some internal consulting in an organization, right? Sometimes it's hard when you've been with an organization for 5, 10, or 15 years, when you're part of the senior leadership team, right? That organization and that culture almost becomes like your child that you've created, right? And I've explained it in this way to chief executive officers and chief financial officers. So when they do things like engagement surveys or they do a climate survey and they get some feedback back that's kind of harsh, that's kind of difficult to deal with, they need to take some time and just digest it, right? Because it feels like you learn something bad about your child, right? And we need to be good as parents, right? And deal with that in an effective, unbiased manner and understand that our children are not perfect, right? But in an organization, sometimes senior leaders and senior leadership teams, especially if they've been there for a few years, when they get some unpleasant feedback about their organization's strategy or its culture or its efficiency or how it's operating or its perception, right? They take it personally, right? Almost too personally, almost like they're hearing their child get criticized. They need just to take a step back, right? Realize not all is perfect, right? We all make mistakes, right? We all maybe made a bad decision strategically a while back, right? So it's really important. That ties to that emotional intelligence, the self-reflection piece, right? And of course, in a digital world where we're constantly being bombarded with messages, right? Social media, our phones, text, this, that, and the other thing, right? Can stream everything. Everything's at our fingertips. Google it, right? When we have that constant bombardment, our ability to self-reflect, create a little self-awareness, and create some emotional intelligence gets diminished, right? So this is really important, right? Leaders having that maturity of judgment. And what does that mean? Seeking out diverse opinions, having a diverse team, not a bunch of people that's just like the chief executive officer, but having a team full of different personalities, different perspectives, different histories, right? Also, it means, the ability to self-reflect and realize where they need to make better decisions, different decisions, right? And maybe part of that self-reflection upon a CEO or a key member of the leadership team isn't giving better answers, but it's asking better questions. And then finally, being willing to take intelligent risks, right? There's a big difference between risk-taking and being reckless, right? And understanding that difference is really important, right? So we talk about it, competitive advantages, how we get there, resources, right? It's a source of your capabilities. They're important. They're broad in scope, right? They cover a spectrum of individual, social, organizational phenomena, right? Alone, however, resources do not create a competitive advantage. They're just there. They're at our disposal. It's up to us, strategic thinkers, to decide how to make use of them, right? It's very important, right? Capabilities, right? It's unique skills of your firm's employees. It's functional expertise, right? Can be developed in a functional area, in a specific area, a cross-functional team. But that's how we gain capabilities. If we look at firms' capabilities, right? Distribution, Walmart, their competitive advantage. Sometimes people think Walmart, their competitive advantage is their size. Really, Walmart, it's distribution and logistics. It's their competitive advantage, right? Marketing, a company like Ralph Lauren, Nordstrom, Crate & Barrel have done a wonderful job with marketing, right? Management, someplace like Hugo Boss or Zara, the fashion company, right? I think Zara was one of the first ones where they would turn around their fashions from design to being in the store every 90 days. So if you walked into a Zara store and you saw something you liked, you had to buy it because the management team and the internal processes would turn that inventory every 90 days. They would be issuing new designs and new clothing, right? Really pretty critical to their success. Right? Capabilities. So 4 criteria for determine a strategic capability. Is it valuable, right? Can it create value for someone? There's a lot of cool, great ideas out there. But if you can't create value in the marketplace, if someone's not willing to pay for it or buy it, what good is it, right? Is it rare, right? If everyone has access to it, it might be hard to get a competitive advantage. Is it costly to imitate? And are there no substitutes out there, right? So those are 4 criteria for determining strategic capabilities, right? They're going to seem very similar to another criteria we're going to look at in a little bit, right? So 4 criteria for a sustainable competitive advantage, right? So maybe I now have a core competency. I've defined that. I think I'm pretty good at it, right? So again, are they valuable? Are they rare? Are they costly to imitate? And how easy is it to substitute, right? That becomes really important. Can I create value? Is it rare? If everyone has access to it, it's going to be hard to have a sustainable competitive advantage. The example I would share with you is Quiznos. So what Quiznos did, right, is they came out with toasted subs. I think I talked about this last week in business level strategies. Quiznos decided one of their competitive advantages was going to be toasted subs. Well, that's great short term, right? Everybody loves toasted subs. They rush to Quiznos. But what does Jimmy John's do? What does Subway do? What does Cousins do? What does Jersey Mike's do, right? As soon as they saw that toasted subs were becoming popular, they all went out and bought toaster ovens. So we have to analyze something, right? If it's valuable and it's rare, it's costly to imitate, and there's no substitutes, right? That's a sustainable competitive advantage, above average returns. Think in this digital age, very fast change, very much technological revolution. Can you get all 4 out of 4, right? If something's valuable and it's rare, and there's not a real lot of substitutes for it right now, but it's not overly costly to imitate, or it's not overly difficult to imitate, it'll be a temporary competitive advantage, right? So then you got to think things like capacity, and eventually when is competition going to eat into our market share? Those kind of questions we need to think through, right? We certainly want to do something called value chain analysis, right? And if your company like Toyota and their Toyota Way and Lean, they've definitely understood that, right? Every part of your value chain has to be bought in, right, to what your strategic competitiveness is and what your competitive advantages are. Becomes very important, right? And just some cautions and reminders. Never take for granted that a core competency today will continue to be a source of competitive advantage in the future. Think of the newspaper industry, the Seth Godin video that we watched, right? Think of a company like Blockbuster, right? I mean, were people always going to have a tape that they watched, or a hard physical copy of a movie, of the media, of the entertainment that they had, right? And always, right? What we do today is the best we know today, and the best that experience has taught us and that we can execute today, but never fail to reserve the right to get smarter tomorrow. Just a few things to share with you about the relationship between resources, capabilities, competitive advantage, right? And never assume that just because we're a rock star today that we're going to be that way tomorrow. With that, I want to thank you for watching this short video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We will be back with all of our modalities, collaborate in person and online on February 29th. In the meantime, I will encourage you for week number 5. Week number 5 starts Thursday, February 22nd. Please make a minimum of 3 posts between February 22nd and 28th. Please have one of those posts engage and respond with your peers on the discussion board, and try to spread them out over multiple days if you can. Again, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I'll wish you a wonderful week, and thank you so much.